Hi everyone, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Vicky, I'm the Deputy Divisional Nurse for Medicine. I do apologise if I lose my voice. I wasn't well and then I spoke yesterday and about 2 minutes in my voice went, and because it was the longest I'd spoken in a couple of weeks, so I have got some water, I'm prepared now, so if I do lose my voice I do apologise. So I've come to join you to talk about the reporting of AVH and the importance of informing the police. So I know after my talk there's going to be further discussion from Nottinghamshire Police. I was going to be accompanied by Sgt Boam, but unfortunately he's had other responsibilities. But he did come yesterday and speak to the medicine team, so I'm going to sort of reiterate the points that he made. So just to give you a bit of background, I've been at NUH for just over a year, started in July of last year. My background is neurosurgery and stroke, so I've experienced AVH throughout my career, but predominantly that's been as a result of patients having head injuries or brain injuries, so they didn't have capacity. So I know that everyone in this room will see patients that lack capacity, that behave in a way that they wouldn't usually typically behave, and we take a compassionate approach to that, don't we? We approach that in a very different way to individuals that know what they're doing. So I'm not going to talk today about patients that lack capacity. I'm going to be talking today about patients and visitors who are aggressive towards us, and there may be a number of reasons for that. We also recognise that people are distressed, they're anxious, they might be grieving, and I think we take that into account as healthcare practitioners. But there is sadly a cohort of people within our community that do abuse NHS workers and other emergency workers, and it's those patients that I'm going to focus on today. And what I'm going to do is just give you a few scenarios, and these are real life scenarios, these are things that have happened to our staff over the last 6 months. So this isn't going back years. In medicine alone, we see more than 2 AVH incidents every single day. That's not all by people with capacity, but in September, for example, we had 64 incidents. 7 of those were moderate harm. So this is something we're all living and breathing every single day. In respect of patients that lack capacity, there's a lot of education and support that's going on, and you'll see that in your breakaway sessions. But the focus, so myself and Joe, I'll just point you out there, Joe. So Joe's the recruitment, retention and wellbeing matron for medicine. We're doing a lot of work around the support that we can give to staff, patients and visitors who experience AVH within our organisation. So I'm going to take you through a few different scenarios, probably from one of the less serious to one of the most serious. And when I say less serious, that doesn't belittle the experience of the individual affected, but in terms of the level of aggression and violence that was experienced. And what you will also probably note from my discussion is I'm going to be typically talking about men. So this isn't to say that men are the only perpetrators, because they're absolutely not. But my experience over this last year is there is a theme emerging. So the scenarios I'm going to talk about, the perpetrators are males in their 40s. It just happens to be the case. So the first instance was I was alerted to a gentleman who was on one of the medical wards who was being verbally aggressive towards our staff. He was leaving the ward frequently, he was going off for a long period of time, coming back in a state of probably under the influence of drugs, and this had persisted over the evening. Wasn't concording with his medication regime, was absent, but then would become verbally aggressive towards the staff because then he wanted things done right there and then. So we've got a process in place. We have a conversation with someone and we explain expectations. Please don't speak to us like that. We're here to do the best for you that we can. And we hope that they change their behaviour. We didn't. So the next step for this gentleman was to give him the patient information leaflet, which details what we expect. It persisted. So I went up to the ward with the matron and we spoke to the MDT and we asked about this patient's medical condition. So what we've introduced into medicine is a rapid review. So the part of this rapid review is an overview of the medical condition of the patient. Can they go home? That's the first instance. So how are we going to mitigate this to our staff? The easiest thing is to discharge somebody. But there may be cases where the risk of discharging that person would be considered too high. So we went up, had a conversation, and actually this gentleman could go home and have community follow-up. So the team set that up, and I went and spoke to this gentleman. Very different behaviour towards me. He was very polite, he didn't apologise. He'd also been aggressive towards another patient, but he was very polite to me and proceeded to explain it was because he wasn't getting his treatment. But obviously, as I explained to you, what the staff was saying, he wasn't there. He was off the ward most of the time. So I gave them a letter, which is an acknowledgement of responsibilities, and this is from our division saying, you've done this, you've been verbally abusive to our staff, we won't tolerate it. These are the actions we're taking, and we're actually discharging you. We had to get security to support us to discharge this person, but he was discharged and the staff reported feeling supported, and that's probably one of the most straightforward incidents in terms of the actions that can be taken. So the patient is medically safe, they have capacity, and we can discharge them, and then we've removed the risk to our staff. We followed that up, however, after discharge, meeting with Cheryl and the team, and we put an alert on the system. So if he were to present again, the staff would know that he is a risk and these are the mitigations to put in place and not to tolerate this behaviour. So I've subsequently seen him over at City Campus and he recognises me. He was admitted to a ward over there. I went to that ward and just to check on how he'd been behaving, and apparently there'd been no further incidents. So it does have an impact. I do believe it has an impact having the conversation, being clear about our expectations on behaviours. We have expectations on ourselves, on our professional values and behaviours, and we should expect that from the public as well. So that was reassuring, and we've reviewed that alert, and that alert has now come off because he's demonstrated improvements in his behaviour. There was another incident, again a gentleman, very, very sick however. So this gentleman was on one of the higher dependency areas and he was grossly racist and abusive to the staff. I've never read such a datex in quite a long time. The ward manager had spoken to him, explained how unacceptable it was. He's dismissed it completely. She'd given the patient leaflet, he'd screwed it up and thrown it on the floor. So I went up and attended the ward with security. I asked the team to phone the police, they reported it to the police, and we spoke to the gentleman. He again was dismissive, didn't acknowledge his behaviour, and we had a multidisciplinary rapid review that day. He was deemed to be so unwell that if we had discharged him, it would have put his life at risk. So we had to come up with mitigations to support the staff. So if the risk to him is so high, what can we do to reduce that risk to our staff? We'd already spoken to him. We told him that we'd informed the police, and his behaviour then started to change. So again, it's about having these frank discussions about expectations. This member of staff was supported and provisions were put in place to make sure that they were protected and that there would be no further abuse towards them. They were obviously asked what they wanted to do in terms of taking this forward, around prosecution, etc. But at the point, understandably, the police weren't able to action anything because he was so unwell. It would be something that would be followed up. So, we clearly explained to the patient the expectations. We spoke to their family as well, and their family were really disappointed with their behaviour, and they apologised on their behalf. And over the course of the next 72 hours, there were no further incidents. He improved, he was discharged the following week, and there'd been no further incidents reported by the staff after that. That was then followed up afterwards, and similarly, a flag was put on the system so that people knew about the risk that he posed in terms of the verbal abuse that he had given. Staff has continued to be in offer support, but didn't proceed with the complaint with the police. And I'll come to that point in a bit. So again, it reiterates that people change their behaviour when they know we won't tolerate it. So another scenario, and this is sort of now progressing to physical violence. There was an incident where a gentleman put his hands around the throat of one of our nurses. The nurse was able to remove themselves from that instance, and I came in the next morning, so a lot of this happens out of hours as well. Came in the next morning, they'd had support overnight from security, from the site team, and we held an emergency rapid review. Can this gentleman go home? Yes, he can. Discharge him. Phoned the police, reported it to the police. The member of staff didn't want to give a statement. So everybody has the right to do that, because I appreciate that could be stressful and you might just want to forget about it. The incident's over, the patient's been discharged. What we found with this gentleman was we then had a case conference very quickly. He'd had 7 previous incidents within the last year in our organisation. Not physical, but 7 previous incidents across every division. So we had a conversation about that. We had support from Cheryl and the team, and the police were also involved. And then it transpired that he's had multiple incidents across multiple NHS providers. So the outcome for this gentleman was that he's had a warning from the police with a view to potentially having a community order. So now we're seeing the next steps. We're seeing not only sanctions within the organisation, but sanctions more broadly. Again, an alert has been put on the system, and that will be monitored. We are still in discussions about this gentleman, about whether we actually commit him into our organisation beyond emergency care. So that's something that's still ongoing. And the final one I want to talk to you about is visitors. So we've had an incident where a visitor has physically assaulted a member of our staff, has caused criminal damage on the property, and security were called, the police were called, they were immediately arrested, and they have been charged, and there is a prosecution going forwards. So these are very, very different circumstances, but I just want to sort of show you the actions that are taken in order to support staff. Now, in the first few incidents, staff weren't prepared to give statements, and I'm sure our police colleagues today will say to you that a witness statement is the best practice, it's the gold standard of evidence, because it not only describes what's happened, but what the impact is on you. We do have CCTV footage in some circumstances, the emergency department, body cams, as we're going to be describing later. So that all supports that the witness statements are really, really important. So what I would like to see us as an organisation do is put more in place to support our staff to be able to feel confident enough to put those witness statements in. So that's the next stage for me. I think we're working through how to deal with it in the moment, undertaking a multidisciplinary review of the patient, putting actions in place to ensure our staff are as safe as they can be. The next part is, and so what? What after that? If somebody has abused our staff, what are the next steps? And we have got known prosecutions that have occurred even this year. So we had 2 incidents within the ED department, and the perpetrators were charged found guilty and have been given fines and also been required to pay compensation to staff. We have also had a case where somebody was given a custodial sentence. It was for a period of weeks. It wasn't to a direct NUH employee, but it was a member of staff who we work very closely with in our organisation on site, and that person received a custodial sentence. There have been further incidents around that, and there's been a lot of cross partnership working in order to ensure that our staff aren't put at risk by this particular individual. I don't want to terrify you. I don't want you to think that, you know, there are people coming into our organisation every day determined to hurt one of you, because actually the number of AVH incidents might be high, and it's the highest this year, I believe, than it's ever been, but we're reporting more, and that's the important thing. We have to report these incidents. A large proportion of them are by patients that don't know that it's not personal, they don't know what they're doing, they're affected by their illness. So there's another big piece of work that's going on around education and training on how we can try to reduce that risk to ourselves when we're caring for people at that capacity. But for those patients that know, or visitors that know what they're doing, that will be abusive, and you've tried all the measures you can in order to be clear about expectations, and that continues, we have to take this forward. We know that speaking to people, I've seen it, having that conversation, being very clear about expectations makes a difference. Prosecuting people for abusing our staff would also make a difference. It would be acknowledged in the community that if you go to NUH and you're abusive to their staff, there are repercussions, because we won't tolerate it. We've seen changes within our practices within NUH, which are really positive. We had a case where somebody had been abusive to a member of staff, and the police needed CCTV footage, but there were barriers in place to that around confidentiality and patient identification and things. And we've worked really closely with our IT colleagues, with our counterpart guardian, with the police, to put a new process in place so that there aren't the delays that there were in releasing the footage to the police. So the more incidents you report and present us with the challenges that you're experiencing, we will make changes to our practice, and I've seen it. It's been such a difference in this last 12 months from when I started to where we are now. In terms of if you do choose to give a witness statement, there is victim support available to you, and if you are asked to go to court, please ask for support. If you want one of us to be there, if you need support, we will absolutely 100% do that for you. You'll be taken to a separate room, to a witness room. There are circumstances in which, when you give your sort of evidence in court, where consideration may be given to obscuring the vision from the perpetrator. However, this is usually done in domestic violence cases, so it can be applied for, but I think that the outcome of that is not usually that in these sort of circumstances that it would be approved. So I know it can be scary, I know there can be delays of getting to court, and people might not want to take it forward, but if you are willing to, there will be support for you, the police will support, we will support as well. And the final point I want to make is just around the reporting to the police. You might think to yourself, well, when do I report to the police? What incident would precipitate me calling the police? And there was an officer who I spoke to probably last year, and I'll never forget what he said. If there is any doubt, there is no doubt. So if you are not sure whether you should report it to the police, then you should report it to the police, because there's something telling you that this isn't right, this isn't acceptable. Now, I do ask all my ward managers to report the incidents to the police, even if the person affected doesn't want to make a statement. And the reason is the police need to understand how big this issue is. So they may not be taking any further action on it because somebody doesn't want to take that forward and there's no CCTV footage, but it gives the police an idea of the gravity of the issue and the amount of racial abuse that staff are encountering is unacceptable. We should have zero tolerance for that, and I would like you all to report it if you encounter it, please. The police will do a risk assessment, and it might be that it is a case of it's about us reporting it. There are differences between a hate incident and a hate crime, but the police will work through that. But we cannot and should not tolerate this. And I always say to the staff, if you were walking down the street and somebody verbally, racially, physically assaulted you, you would phone the police. It doesn't matter that you're on NHS property. It doesn't matter that you're at work. If you encounter that anywhere, we need to report it. And the more that message gets out to the public, I would hope that we see less and less incidents. So we're here to support you. As you can see, I haven't lost my voice today because I'm just so passionate. The adrenaline's obviously going about it. You know, as Belle said, the Trust are completely on board with this. They will support you in any which way you need. We've introduced some wellbeing support in medicine because we appreciate that sometimes too soon after the incident might not be the right time for you to get support. So we do this 3-stage follow-up now to see if people want support later down the line. You'll hear all about the wellbeing support in the organisation. But my key messages are report, report, report. And we will do everything we can to support you with that. That's whether you want to take it through to prosecution or not. It is your decision I say it's your decision for prosecution, it's a police decision on whether they take that forward, but I mean in terms of being able to support the police to be able to perhaps reach that threshold of what would enable further repercussions for that individual. Is that all right?